Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax while we chat about what is happening in the stars above us for the weekend. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the show today, all about the electric tension in the air. And that is likely happening for us because of Mars in a square to Uranus and a sort of mitigating transit of Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus today. But that is not all that we have to talk about. I'm really going to try to avoid talking much about the eclipse until Monday because it happens on Tuesday. And yet, everything that's happening right now is sort of building into that eclipse energy on Tuesday. So know that this is all, and anything that we talk about is really literally the backdrop to this very powerful Virgo lunar eclipse that is occurring. So, and as we look at this electric weekend, as I've been kind of talking about it, it really begins with this energy of Mars. And even further back, it goes to the energy of the week that we are holding the space for right now in human design, where the sun is in the gate 37 and the earth is in the gate 40. They form a channel, and the channel is called the channel of community. And in the gate 37, it's the energy of peace. And in the 40, it's the gate of restoration or resting. And that is all about the nodal axis that we're in right now as well, because they're the same gates, the north node in the gate 37 peace and the south node in the gate 40 restoration. And what's the first news thing I see this morning? How Pakistan and Afghanistan are now going to go to war. It's interesting, right, to see a week with so much potential to create peace turn into something or devolve into something that is anything but that. So, as we dive into this, electric tension of the weekend, I want to really ground us in the larger field of energy that we're standing in, because again, the outer world seems a little chaotic, even for the electric feeling that we're in. I'll tell you, this morning when I woke up, I had butterflies in my stomach, right? And I know when I start to feel that, if there's nothing that I'm outwardly nervous about or outwardly afraid of, or tension that I'm experiencing in my own life, I know that it's a collective tension that I'm experiencing, and that's what it was this morning. I did the check-in, right? Am I feeling okay? Is there anything that I'm worried about? Is there anything that's going on for me that, is scary or survival threatening or something like that? And there isn't, right? So when there isn't, then I kind of feel like, okay, this is the energy that's coming up from collective tension or planetary tension. So if you woke up this morning feeling a little bit like that, or if your day has kind of been that feeling of, sometimes we experience it as a feeling of the other shoe about to drop, right? Where there's this, we don't know what it is, but something that feels like it's going to drop. Well, then that is likely a part of the tension of this particular weekend. Now, today gives me an opportunity, since there isn't a ton of transit energy to talk about, it does give me a moment of time to really talk a little bit deeper about some points in human design that we don't always get to talk about. And in fact, even in the context of a reading with people, it's sometimes hard to get to this level of human design information because, at least in your first session with me, there's a lot to talk about: your type, your strategy, your incarnation cross, and your authority, and your profile, and your way that you are in relationship with people, decision making, things like that. So we don't often get into what is called circuitry in human design. So I want to be able to get us a little bit into that today, because there's this evolutionary theme that's going on that is sort of underneath the surface of everybody's human design at this point in time, right? And I think it would be helpful to understand, well, what is it that is being evolved within us, or what is being evolved from the bigger picture at this point in time? So let's go back to this human design week. I'm actually going to show, let's see, yeah, let me share my screen for a moment. There we go. Now, hopefully you guys are seeing my screen here. And what you're looking at is a human design chart. And what I've done here is I've outlined all of the gates that are activated in a particular circuit. And the circuit is called the tribal circuit or tribal circuitry. And it's made up of two different parts. It's made up of the defense circuit where we are supporting one another within the tribe. And it is also economic in terms of how we share resources and how we contribute to the sustainability of a community, a family, a tribe, etc. So all of these gates that are defined in blue are part of the tribal circuitry, as well as this particular channel here that's in pink. And I highlighted it in pink so that it would stand out separately from these other gates, because this is where the sun and earth and north node and south node are currently sitting in our human designs, but also, in our charts. Astrologically, this energy is activated. And, peace here, the gate 37 is on the solar plexus. So it creates an emotional field, an emotional energy that we're connected to. And peace is a negotiation here in this particular gate. It's not assumed. We can't assume that just because we are in a family or a community or a nation that, or an earth in this case, that we're going to have peace. It just doesn't work out that way. Um, because gate 37 is teaching us all that peace comes through our clear emotional agreements, right? How we negotiate the emotional energy between us. And peace isn't about people pleasing. So many times I see the 37 energy, especially if you have the gate 37 defined on an open solar plexus, meaning this whole center would be white instead of pink or whatever color from whatever system you're using. And an open solar plexus has a lot of people pleasing energy associated with it, right? These are people that feel they're so empathic, they're feeling the energy of emotion from everybody around them. It's not necessarily their own energy. In fact, it is not usually their own energy. So if you have an open solar plexus and now we have the gate 37 defined, then there is this people pleasing tendency that may be coming up for you to kind of placate and play nice and walk or tread carefully on the words that you're using, etc. Now, this gate is also not the energy of self-sacrifice. Even though it's Piscean energy, this energy is not about sacrificing yourself or your feelings for anybody else. This is not quiet resentment. This isn't allowing the energy of the emotions to build up to a point where you start to feel resentful. It is a conscious covenant, and a covenant meaning an agreement, something sacred almost that is created between you and a community, a family, another person, you and yourself, even in a relationship with yourself, right? There's these covenants, these agreements that we make for ourselves about ourselves. And who are you in agreement with becomes a really good question. And what are the terms? Right? So many times I see people in relationships and we've unconsciously taken on sometimes an agreement, an unspoken agreement about how we'll behave, about how we will be able to work together or not. And we've never actually spoken out loud that agreement. For example, you might be in a relationship with someone and there's the unspoken agreement that you will always be the peacemaker. I have a couple of clients like that, right? Especially if they have Libra dense energy in their astrology charts, they may be taking on this role of peacemaker, assuming that that is the expectation that everybody has for them. And it's time to really question that level of assumed agreement, right? What are the terms? What are the terms of that agreement? It's great that you're a peacemaker. It's great that you're diplomatic and tactful, but to what end are you taking that? How far are you willing to take that? And, there may be this agreement that you are going to create peace at the cost of your own self-being, your own self-good. So now it's time to take a look at these agreements. It's up in the air. It has been, right? Right. This isn't new. This has been in the air. It's just stronger this week with the sun and earth also included in that 3740 channel of community right here. Now, on the other side of this, we have the gate 40. And the gate 40 is sitting on the identity or the will center, the heart center, the ego center. And the gate 40 is the gate of the worker who needs solitude, who needs time away, who needs a vacay, right? Who needs to unplug, to chill, to chillax, right? Take time for themselves. And it does say, this gate does say, I will give to the tribe, but I must also retreat. And we miss this signal because the energy of the will center or heart center sitting there is a pulse, and it pulses on and it pulses off, on, off. And because we are living in such a production oriented world where it's go, 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 go all the time, we miss the signal when it says, no, I need rest. No, I need quiet. I need solitude. I need to stop. Right? I did this to myself earlier this year. I just kept going and going and going and going and going and going until finally an injury stopped me, right? And the universe will sometimes work to that extent on your behalf to get you to wake up and slow down and understand that you need time to retreat. So we have retreat on one end or restoration of your energy on one end, and we have this energy of peace on the other. And this is all tribal energy. And I am going to dig a little deeper into what tribal energy is here in just a moment. But um, if the gate 37 on the solar plexus here says, let's be in right relationship, right? Let's create peace through our relationships. Then the gate 40 at the other end says, not at the cost of my vitality, right? I'm not giving myself away in order to be something that you all think I need to be. And with the nodes here, North Node is sitting at the gate 37, South Node at the gate 40. It really says not at the cost of my vitality, but also we're collectively learning that we need to balance our devotion to our families, our communities, with our devotion to ourselves, right? There's this I am presence thing going on that says we really need to fulfill our cups, right? If my cup is empty, then there's nothing to drink, right? There's nothing there. And I need to get a refill, right? And if I don't refill, I can't keep drinking something that isn't there, right? Energetically, you can't keep going and going and going if you haven't refilled your own cup. So how do you balance that? Your devotion to the outer world, to your family, your friends, your whatever community, and against taking care of you, right? Taking care of you. Now, let me stop this sharing here for a minute. Now, when we have the energy of the nodes sitting here, we're examining in the big extreme here, our old family patterns. So I did this, in a session with someone yesterday, looking at the pattern that's developed and why, and how do we keep upholding these patterns in our families, in our relationships with people in our family through the years, even though we've totally outgrown the pattern, but we keep it there, right? This is also happening in the culture. And we see this happening in the world outside of us almost every day now, this cultural contract that we've had and how it's being rewritten, right? Or adopted, or parts dropped off, parts rewritten, new parts added. And it is tribal loyalty versus personal truth. With this ton of planets headed toward Aries, we are really having to identify who we are in the midst of all of this. And we have to identify where we overgive because it's not sustainable. Tribal energy, which is the circuitry we're going to be talking about here shortly, is all about sustainability. And if it's not sustainable, then we are dipping into this layer of fatigue, of overstretching and overreaching that undermines our health and our well-being. And then we also need to look at where we withdraw. Sometimes the withdrawing energy is an escape as opposed to a restoration. Now, you could say that sometimes escape is a good thing, right? I need to escape away from the day, right? Calgon, take me away kind of thing. That's not the kind of escape or withdraw I'm talking about here. I'm really talking about where you refuse to stand up for yourself, right? Or where you refuse to take that step that is necessary in order to do what's best for you, or in some cases, to do what's best for the others involved. And so we're in deep ancestral territory here, right? And societal territory here. And now, when we get to this weekend energy where Mars today is coming into the square with Uranus, we have this tension erupting around the agreements that we share with one another. And they're brittle, right? We have these brittle agreements. They're brittle because, first of all, they've likely not been voiced or been really agreed upon, and maybe from reluctance to say what needs to be said, maybe from a fear that if I say what needs to be said, they're not going to love me or want me, I won't belong. All of these things equate to us taking actions that are not correct for us, and it takes us out of peace, right? And it puts us into conflict and or confrontation even. And Mars is a planet of confrontation and conflict, right? And he is in the square, which is tension to the planet Uranus, who is about liberation and freedom, right? So he's awakening us to where it is that we are caught in this loop of agreements that are no longer useful, right? Or no, that maybe they're no longer useful, but maybe they were never useful in the first place, right? Maybe they tied us to obligations that feel now like they're so heavy, right? They're albatross around our necks. So, as we look at the lesson of the week and also continuing through the nodal axis for the time being, peace is not the absence of conflict. If you look up the uh, definition in a dictionary, we really don't have a very good definition of what peace is, because it'll say it's the absence of conflict. God, there has to be a deeper relationship that we build with peace, because peace is truly an alignment within our relationships with one another, with ourselves, with our community, with our nation, with our world. It isn't just an absence of conflict. It's really a relationship, and it is required, right? Restoration is required. Peace is required if you're going to survive, right? If you're going to thrive, let's move it into thriving energy. And if you do not consciously negotiate your agreements, then Mars and Uranus will renegotiate them for you, right? It'll be like something blows up. Either the relationship blows up, or you stand back and you're just watching things crumble around you. That would be what happens if it's unconsciously playing out in your life. If you're conscious about it, though, you get choice. You're choosing how it is that you are going to move forward. So, this week's energy, as well as this higher nodal energy that we're a part of right now, asks us what we are obligated to. It wants us to examine what it is that we think we are obligated to. And then, in that obligation, what are you resentful of? Right? I'm not saying that we should shove off a responsibility. That is definitely not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is, where have you taken on obligation or responsibility incorrectly? Right? Maybe you've taken on the responsibility for caring for someone and they never wanted that care. They didn't want your presence. And if that's the case, the more that you try to be that presence, the more conflict gets injected into the relationship. So that should be a stopping point, right? A point where you look at it and you go, okay, I leave you to your own devices then, right? I'm going to renegotiate this contract with you or this agreement with you, right? Now, then what is it that you need to restore? Is it your energy? Is it your time, your resources, your health, your wellness, your healthy habits in your life? Because Virgo eclipse coming up March 3rd tells us a lot about the health and well-being of ourselves and what needs to be eclipsed. You could think that is cutting out um, of our existence in order to be healthy, to maintain health. Okay. And where have you agreed to something that your nervous system can no longer sustain? Like it in your body, right? You feel those flutters. You feel that sometimes I feel like this flush that comes up my neck, like, what is going on? Sometimes you get that tension headache, or you're just so fatigued, you're tired, and it's the middle of your day and you're like, I need a nap, right? I need a stress reliever, right? Those are the nervous system sort of signs that the voltage is getting too high, right? And that you need to step back. Maybe you even need to look deeper into what is all this high voltage about. Is it a specific relationship? Is it your work or your job? Is it your health? I mean, so many different things, right? And, in this case, we don't necessarily have a house to look at in the astrology chart because human design doesn't do it that way. And since we're speaking about human design, what we can look at then is the emotional solar plexus. It's all about the emotional energy, right? And what are you aligning yourself emotionally with? If you are, I think we talked about this on Monday, if you're feeling an emotional reaction to something, then you've got to stop yourself before you go into that reaction so that you can really decide, where's this coming from? Where's the inner conflict? Right? Where's the need to shift something before I respond to that trigger? And then I can realign myself with joy. I want to say something here that's really fascinating in human design. When you look at your human design chart, at the very bottom of the chart lies the root center. And the root center is where all the format energies are for the human template. And one of the gates on that very bottom root center is the gate of bliss, the gate of joy, or the joy of living. And to me, as I look at that, I'm getting chills. So it's something profound for all of you to think about, that one of the format energies of a human being is joyfulness. Now, if that's a format energy, we spend a lot of time chasing that particular energy, chasing happiness, chasing joyfulness, ignoring, the need that what has to shift in order to move us back to joyfulness, right? So every conflict or confrontational feeling that is generated out of the solar plexus, even every day, is really a call for us to bring back the joy, right? To bring back the happiness. And that on with the saying that happiness is an inside job, right? We're not going to find it out here in the inner world. It's fundamental to who we are. So at any moment, we can choose to move out of the conflict and into the joy, back to the bliss, right? Even if the bliss is just the releasing of said relationship or conflict or obligation. Okay. You guys, check in with me. Tell me how you're feeling about this. I'm going to quick go in and say good morning to everybody that's here. First person I saw was my husband, Terry. Nice to have you with us this morning. Nargis, good morning to you. And Julie, oh my gosh, I have been trying to reach out to you because we have a session hanging out there and I want to complete that with you. Tamara, good morning. And JLo, good morning. And Amy D, good morning. Christine Buckingham, am I the only one without audio? Gosh, I hope I hope you are because I hope it's not something on my end. But if it is, someone else let me know. And Jacqueline, thank you. Please take a moment to smash that like button or that thumbs up button, depending on the platform that you are in, and then share the video with someone, right? Someone that needs to hear this very information. Teddy, good morning to you. Happy Friday. Thank you again for the like and the subscribe. And Tina, good morning. Looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. Patty, good morning. Jacqueline J-Lo, guilty of all of that with my 37 in the fourth line EQ. Definitely. So it is also very powerful in my own chart. I have that channel defined. I think 37 is my Chiron. So it's a lesson that I've been learning in this lifetime. And thankfully, I have gained some wisdom around all of that. And good morning to Namira. Good morning to TD Hawk. Actually, Tamara, I already said that. Oh, wow. Yes, voltage meter has been surging. Good morning, Jana. Great to have you with us. And J-Lo, I've been taking naps after the sun starts to set, but oddly, it sets so early and I don't need to be in bed. Uh, and I'm not saying that naps are bad. I think they're great, right? I think it's really great if you're someone that can nap and then still be able to go to bed at a reasonable time, um, or following your body's circadian rhythms. But I am saying that it can be a symptom. It's symptomatic, perhaps, of where you are either running too high a voltage and your body's like, no, I can't do it anymore. Or it is a symptom of where you are creating or you're involved perhaps in an obligation that feels like that albatross and needs to be shifted. Jana, good morning. Hearing you loud and clear. Perfect, perfect. Thanks you and Julie letting me know. So maybe something going on with your audio. Christine, maybe you need to refresh or unmute something maybe. And Tina, undefined 4130. And that, so we weren't talking about that yet. 37 to the 40, 3740. So same center, 37 is on the solar plexus, but the 40 moves up to the will center or ego center. And Christine, harmonious interdependence. Ooh, I like that. That's a great term. And Jackie says, I do shock everyone. So weird. Some people have the gate of shock in their charts. We all have the gate of shock, so we're all capable of it. Uh, but sometimes the shock is all about awakening. And Uranus, everybody has Uranus somewhere in their chart. Everybody has Uranus somewhere in their human design, and that is likely where you get awakened, right? Okay, so now I want to look from tribal peace now to the electric shock. So here we are. We are sitting here on Earth with the Sun Earth combination teaching us about peace, agreements, and restoration, restoring our energy. And then we look up at the sky this weekend and we see there's this parade of planets, right? You've probably heard that astronomically from people. And then we also see Mars and Aquarius, the future, looking ahead, the energy of humanitarianism, of being a human, and that squaring Uranus and Taurus, which has a lot to do with safety and security, stability and finances, and how we get along. The earth itself is Taurus, right? In this respect, and how we farm the land, how we care for the land, how we care for one another, all of that in Taurus. And now we're running this high voltage through that particular um, lens, and it is the square which is causing the voltage to spike, right, to amp up. And this is happening at the very end of both of these signs, right? Mars is at 2739, and I think Uranus is at 2752. So we have, actually I can show you this chart. I can show you the chart of the day, and you see the orange line that shows you the square. Up toward the top, we have Mars. Mars is the one that's at 2739 and Uranus at 2743. So for all intents and purposes, they're in the 28th degree of the sign. So now we have this ending approaching for both of these planets through the signs that they are transiting through, which means that we've reached sort of a critical threshold of pressure that is being brought to all of us via these signs. Now, as we start to think about, Mars and conflict, the potential for conflict and confrontation, and it's related here in a sign that is representing society or culture, right? That Aquarian energy is the group think, group mind, how we gather together, how we associate with one another. That type of energy is in what Mars is in Aquarius. And then we're looking at the Taurus side of things with Uranus, where we're looking at the financial picture, the economics of it, the sustainability of what we are living through at this moment. And how does all of that play in with the energies of the North and South node and with the Sun Earth sitting at 37 and 40? And really, what that does is cause me to go back to the tribal energy of our human design. And so let me share that screen again. I know I'm going back and forth here with you guys this morning a bit, but I'm hoping you're getting to see these things that tie together through these two systems. This is what I call astro design, right? We're seeing the bigger picture of all of this energy. And as we take a look at this tribal energy, now you can look at all of these blue lines that are connected, as well as the pink line. And these are all the different gates that are a part of what is called tribal circuitry. And I want to talk about this because tribal circuitry is fundamentally shifting as we get into 2027. So it almost feels like I'm a little late in teaching you about tribal circuitry because now it's going to have to be taught a little differently as time goes on. But there's some fundamental energies here that can often be misunderstood in terms of our human design and what does it mean to have this circuitry. Well, first of all, it's the circuitry of love that is expressed through commitments. Overall, if I had to step back and say what tribal circuitry is all about, it's about love and relationships. And how do we sustain, how does the energy of belonging and community or tribe sustain us all? How does that sustain us? And in this circuitry, every one of these gates, the 45, the 21, the 26, the 44, the 50, 27, 59, 6, 37, 40, 19, and the 32, 54. That's a lot of gates. And they're all devoted to love in some way. Or it governs our family bonds. What bonds us? What brings us together? Our community structures, right? The economics of the tribe, the resources that are available to the tribe, and the agreements that we make that within the relationships, within the family, within the community and the tribe. Reciprocity, how do we receive and give, right? How do we do that in balance? Our resources, of course, so money and products and things like that that we can use as trade with other groups of people. Protection and provision, both very highly important energies in this energy called tribal circuitry. And it asks some fundamental questions like who belongs? Who belongs in the tribe? Who belongs in the community? Who belongs in the nation? Who belongs in the world? Who belongs here, right, in our borders? It is also asking who is responsible for whom here? Who's really literally in command of the tribe? And what do we owe one another, right? Our allegiance, our loyalty, our bonding with one another. Is blood thicker than water kind of energy? All of that comes through this tribal circuitry. Yet this is not about romantic love. So when I say love energy, this is the covenant of love, right? This is out of this bigger loving force in the universe, we are together in this planet. And how do we agree that we will perform our duties to one another, how we will negotiate with one another, how we will agree, the agreements that we will adopt with one another, and all of that. So the mechanics in this particular tribal energy say, I bring the 37, for example, says, I will bring emotional warmth and love in the family, harmony within the family, and bonding in the family. And when I say family here, I'm not necessarily speaking of family that's blood family, because many of us have relationships with people that we think of as family, even though by blood we're not related at all. And then the gate 40, just for another example here, says, I will work I will provide, but I also have to rest. I need to take time for me. And together they'll form this channel of community. And it's really this bridge energy in the tribal circuitry between what we call the defense circuit, which is the 50 to the 27, the feminine energy of what are the values of the tribe and how will we teach one another and provide for one another. What is it that are our unnegotiables, our non negotiables, right? That children are fed, children are clothed, people have housing, people take care of one another. And then the masculine side of this energy of this tribal circuit that says, I will provide, right? I will take care of the protection. And that's the rightful place of the masculine energy. And the feminine energy is laying the template for what the tribe needs in order to be thriving. And so that circuitry is a little different than what the 4037 starts to say, because it starts to say things like how do we show up in community with one another? What is it about this? What is the sustainable exchange that we need to be able to be a successful community? And it can get kind of tripped up in a bunch of low shadow energies, things like martyrdom or dominance or collapse, things that, as the masculine energy has that tribal sense of conflict, right? Or confrontation. It's part of that masculine energy. I'm not saying men, but the masculine energy itself is territorial, right? It says these are the boundaries of the territory and you must ask permission to cross the territory, right? So this is this old energy, but it has been the energetic foundation of civilization. It has helped us thrive, but it's changing, right? It's fundamentally shifting and it's coming untied. It's becoming untethered. And it is almost like all of the systems that we created that supported civilization's growth and expansion and successfulness are being erased and being rewritten in terms of contracts and agreements. And that makes us feel very uncomfortable, right? It becomes very emotional for us. Now, as we carry these masculine and feminine energies within us, when they're healthy, they're in partnership and they work together well. But when they're distorted, which they have been over the course of time, one side overgives, one side over controls, one exhausts, and the other withdraws. And this is where this big imbalance has happened in the divine masculine and feminine energies and how they show up in our lives. So how does that practically show up in our world, right? If we think about, our world, stepping back, becoming objective, right? If we have a distorted masculine energy, it is about work without heart. No heart in the work. I'm just doing. I'm automatically doing, right? I'm not doing what I love. There's no passion. There's no love to it. There's no real commitment to the work except to say, I have to do this work every day to get a paycheck so I can pay for myself to live, right? And my family. It is authority without reciprocity. It becomes control, right? It becomes control mechanisms. It becomes protection without tenderness, right? It becomes our drawing new lines around what immigration means. And then we just lock people up in fences and treat them horribly, right? We treat them terribly. Uh, Not right or wrong. This is just what I'm observing. And then if we have a distorted feminine, because that happens too, we have overgiving. We have the exact opposite, right? We're giving too much. And emotional manipulation, turning on the tears to get what we need, right? Or the manipulation in that role that gets someone to protect us. Emotional manipulation undermines harmony in the family. And it is harmony at the cost of truth, right? That's placating energy. It's the divine feminine not rising up and saying, wait a minute, you are sacrificing our children's health, our children's, nutrition, you are sexualizing our children. And where's the feminine? Where's the outrage of the divine feminine here, right? And tribal circuitry, though, when it is balanced, integrates both of these energies in a nicely balanced way that harmonizes the community. It says we survive together. It says we thrive together, that we have to work together to, elevate the life that we're living. And then layering in the nodes now, we can see how this becomes something of an important conversation, right? We're collectively learning about the agreements that we've gone into that we want to get out of, which ones define our future, and what kind of families are we going to want in the future, or what kind of communities do we want, and what kind of mutual responsibility do we want to create in our communities, in our families, in our tribes. And now we have this tension showing up with Mars squaring Uranus that destabilizes further the older structures. And then the other saving grace, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we will here in the next few minutes, is Mercury and Venus coming together in a conjunction in Pisces, which softens and dissolves the old emotional contracts. So now the question becomes, are the agreements we've inherited from our forefathers still life-giving? Are they sustainable? Or are they depleting the tribe? Are we being depleted piece by piece? And this can show up globally as staying in alliances that no longer work. And we see alliances that are strained and are changing. The face of alliances is changing around the world. We see a redefinition of loyalty, almost a need to, bend the knee to someone in order to belong. We see conflict around provision and protection and who's deserving of receiving. We have conversations about who belongs and who doesn't belong. We have resource distribution issues. For God's sakes, we have distribution issues. We can't even get goods and services around to where they need to go. We have labor versus rest tensions, meaning, I've noticed a louder voice of corporate types wanting fewer people working from home and more people working in their businesses, right? That strains all the resources, right? It strains the highways, it strains, the resource, the gasoline, right? All of these different things. And it's control again, right? It comes from control. So what tribal energy is all about, everything you see highlighted here, is all about survival and sustainability. And it's when it's imbalanced, it becomes tribalism, nationalism, right? Sort of the negative of those energies. But when it's balanced, it becomes community, or it becomes family. It becomes a culture that comes together around, things that benefit everybody. And that distinction matters enormously right now, right? Because we are choosing what we're building for the future. And, in a way, how do we sustain one another without depletion, right? We know certain things are a drain on society. We see them. But how do we build a better system, right? That is inclusive, that doesn't drain, but sustains, right? So no drain, but sustains. Now, as we look more here into the aspect of Mercury in retrograde right now, um, sitting with Venus, I'm just going to quickly show you the picture of this. Here's Mercury and Venus in green toward the top left of the chart, and they're in the sign of Pisces. So a water sign that is much more dissolving, is much more about higher spiritual connection and universal love, tolerance, acceptance, and all of that. But it's also sometimes blurring the lines, right? Not seeing clearly, not able to make good decisions kind of energy. So we have, this time where, we've got something that brings some peace to us, but only if we're willing to really work with this energy. And that when I think about, the two planets, Mercury in retrograde in Pisces. So what we have, is kind of a reworking of the energy of the mind and the communication, how do we talk with one another? because Mercury governs thoughts and communication and perception. And Venus here in this particular sign governs love and money and values and worth. Agreements, the very agreements that we've been talking about are ruled by Venus. And what we cherish. What do we cherish, right? And in Pisces, everything softens, everything blurs a little bit. It becomes more permeable, right? We can get through. It's like there's this permeable net that we can move through. And the retrograde Mercury adds another layer, right? Where we're revisiting, where we're reevaluating, where we're reconsidering, reimagining, remembering, right? Mercury in retrograde. So we may be looking at how our old relationships, how our relationships as they were versus how they are versus how we want them to be. We may be having a realization about where we've idealized something or someone and they're not living up to what that ideal is. Maybe we have a financial value shift. Maybe we have compassion rising where there was once anger, or maybe grief surfaces that we didn't really know was still there. And you'll know grief because it's visceral, it's deep, it's heart-wrenching sometimes, right? And Pisces energy doesn't demand logic here. With Mercury here in the sign and in retrograde, we can't apply logic to any of this. It invites us to feel, to be emotionally engaged, to be heart-centered in all of this. So here's this brilliance going on in the sky this weekend, right? We have one part of us wanting to react and to awaken and to liberate and free ourselves. And on another part of us, we have this reflection part, right? We want to go deeper. We want to see within. One part says break free, and another part says, wait, what am I really feeling? And it's not really contradiction energy. We could think of it as, going in two different directions, but it's integration energy. How do we integrate the two? Right? How do we integrate this breaking free and living, life free of victimization energy or free of an agreement that's felt so heavy and so tight around our necks, and at the same time tap into what it is that we're really feeling about that, because there might be grief in it. There might be grief as you realized how much time has been devoted to upholding a relationship that is falling flat. And it's okay to feel that grief. It's an authentic feeling. You are not your grief, right? Just like you're not your anger, you're feeling it. You're tapping into it. So Mars, Uranus are going to activate the body and the nervous system, right? That's trickling through with all of this vibration energy. Mercury and Venus, though, they're activating the heart. And the heart energy is much softer. So if you let the electric shock energy dictate the story, you may react and be reactive. But if you let the emotional awareness inform the actions that you will take, you can awaken, right? And the difference between this is huge, right? It's between, evolving or devolving in some ways. All right. So let me take a look at questions here before I go on. So interesting. Since last year, I keep hearing and being guided to everyone will be forced to work on their core wound. Yeah, of course. That's why I'm doing core wound work. It's why I added it, to the main body of the work that I do, because, even I recognize that I have a core wound and it gets activated, and then I react accordingly, right? According to the wound, which is not the way that it's meant to be, right? We're meant to respond. And in order to heal, we have to recognize when we are in reaction to a core wound that we're holding. But sometimes we can't even identify what that core wound is. So we have to dig deeper into our chirons. We have to dig deeper into the Pluto in our chart because it's our evolutionary growth signal. We have to dig deeper into the sun and the moon and the ascendant in our chart because they form this trifecta of personality and emotional body and personality that is, what people see from you. Your essence is, in there. And that's why I like to do the core work. So what you just described makes sense with Uranus moving into Gemini and the nervous system. Yes, right? If we don't purge some of this nervous toxic energy now, that might ramp up as we get into April and May when Uranus makes the move into Gemini without ever retrograding back to the solid stability of Taurus, right? He's going to be in that air sign, and with that electric air moving, the nervous system moving, like wildfire through the air, through networks and media and all of that. So it's kind of a um, I don't, we always have choice, right? We always have choice. But I don't think right now that it's really about, yes, you can do this or not. I think it's imperative that we all really start to work through this energy. So now, in the last 10 minutes here, um, I want to zoom out a little bit into um, human design, right? Because when I look at, because I do both astrology and human design and gene keys, I get a bigger picture sometimes of what the energy of a particular sign is bringing us. So when I look at all the gates that are involved with Piscean energy, we have the gate 30, which is the gate of passion. We have the gate 55, the gate of faith, both on the solar plexus. We have the gate 37, a gate of peace, also on the solar plexus. And the gate 22, the gate of grace, also on the solar plexus. Sense a theme here, emotional wisdom. We have gate 36, also called turbulence, on the solar plexus. And then there are two other gates that kind of take us out into a different area. We have the gate 63, the gate of curiosity, or the gate of doubt that lives in the head. And we have the gate 25, the love of spirit, right? That's the closing gate for Pisces, as well as the opening gate for Aries energy. So we see this sort of theme that's rushing through here, right? Almost all of these gates in Pisces sit on your solar plexus. And that means this is an emotional frequency season, right? In the gate 30, the gate of passion, this is the energy of longing. And this is the energy that desires experience, the experience of having something or being something or belonging somewhere. And gate 30 says, pretty much, I don't just want life to happen. I want to feel it. I want to feel it deeply. Now, in the shadow of the gate 30 and Pisces is about attachment, right? Attachment to the desire. And in the gift, it becomes a holy kind of intensity, right? Intensity that is driven by a light touch, right? A light touch. I'm holding it lightly so I can, be open to receiving it however it comes. And Pisces then begins with the energy of longing, right? Longing. So identify what's the longing in your life. We've already been through the sun at the gate 30, right? Now the inner planets are kind of dancing through that sign. The gate 55, the gate of faith, also on the solar plexus. This is the emotional abundance. This is where abundance is truly found in our human design template. It is not found on the sacral where you work for it. This is where you align with it, right? And it's not just material abundance. This is the faith that even in chaos, there is a purpose behind everything. Everything that's happening has a purpose. In the shadow, this can feel like victimhood or emotional despair. And in the gift, it becomes trust in this unseen current that's leading us to freedom. Because in the gene keys, the higher energies are about freedom. And Pisces energy here asks us, can we trust the emotional wave? Can you trust that this is moving us in the right direction? The gate 37, which we've talked a lot about this week and also today, also in the solar plexus. Here we are again, but this is about harmony and peace in relationships, the emotional agreements that keep us bonded and or keep us tied or committed, overly committed. And it's belonging energy. And Pisces dissolves boundaries. So the gate 37 asks us to bring warmth and love in the dissolution of those agreements that no longer can be upheld. Peace here isn't passive, right? It's relationship oriented. It's relational. We have to have a relationship with peace or we cannot find peace. Plain and simple. Gate 22, which the sun has not yet entered, it's the later in the month, This is emotional openness. It is called the gate of grace. And here we have charm, we have sensitivity, we have moodiness, we have the ability to be moved by words, by feelings, by emotions, and our own plus others. And Pisces here teaches us that the vulnerability to those feelings that we have or that we have as empathy to others is not a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's tenderness. And it's also magnetic. It attracts to us the right experiences. Now, the gate 36, that's a whole different story. It's also on the solar plexus, though, but it's also called the gate of chaos or turbulence. And here's the truth: Pisces energy, as calm as we want to think it is, or as peaceful and as overly, as sensitive and emotional, it is also not necessarily calm energies. Those deep waters, when stirred up, become giant waves of emotion. And gate 36 is the crisis that occurs before we have a breakthrough. It is the storm surge, right? It's when Mars squares Uranus, even though they're not in Pisces, but Pisces is still there and very activated. We may feel that gate 36 in our bones sometimes. It may make us feel jaded about life and the experiences that we're having. But that turbulence is sometimes an initiation. Then, when we move out of that emotional solar plexus and up into the head center, the gate 63 is about doubt, but it's also about curiosity. It's about questioning. I wonder what would happen if, or what if this is, the gateway to something bigger, to something better, to something more emotionally aligned. Here we have the mental pressure, though, to understand something, to understand the feelings, to understand, why is this happening? And Pisces here doesn't eliminate the doubt. It actually compounds it, I guess, a bit. It invites inquiry, though, without being rigidly confined to what you think the answers are. It is more open minded than that. It is curiosity without control. And it is also giving us this question: can we question without needing certainty? Right? Can we ask the question, what more is possible, without having this very knowing of, well, only this is possible, right? Because the magical is possible. And finally, our Piscean journey ends in the gate 25, but it's also the opening salvo in Aries energy. And it's the heart of Pisces energy, because the gate 25 is about unconditional love. It is about the shadow energy of feeling naive, right? Not looking at what's really right in front of our faces. In its gift, it becomes universal compassion. It becomes the higher heart, right? It becomes the heart that encompasses and embraces everyone equally, everything equally. It is the love that exists before agreements try to make it more constricted. In the shadow, this gate in the gene keys is constriction. And it is the love that exists before the tribe dictates to us what it is that we can love or who we can love. It is the love that comes before the contract that locks us in. And yet, it is also holding spiritual innocence. It is the innocence that unlocks the love when we realize that we've contracted or constricted and we want to grow, right? Expand. So the thematic thread through the sign of Pisces and through Pisces season is about longing. It's about faith. It's about peace. It's about grace. It's about turbulence. It's about curiosity and the love of spirit, right? Unconditional love. And it's not necessarily a neat kind of emotional arc that we're moving through, because it's not. It's an ocean. And the ocean is upset by the winds, by the air, right? It's upset by the emotional energy that stirs it up. There's electric tension, on the surface, and there are deep emotional undercurrents below, right, that we are all contending with. So Pisces season isn't asking you to figure it all out. It just isn't. You can't figure out emotional energy. There's no thinking in emotions, right? It's asking you to feel it fully, and to, from that feeling, to let an awakening emerge, right? In your commitments, in your agreements, in your relationships, in the way that you love. It's very impactful that way. All right. Questions. I call Chiron the gift after the storm, if it makes sense. All of us travel in this journey, teaching us through the cycles of wounding like Chiron, which we help with sharing our story for others. Indeed, right? And I think that's a very true thing about Chiron. We all carry the wound. And guess what? A good percentage of us on the planet have that wound in Pisces, right? The wound is in Pisces for me, for people born from 6 years, so maybe from about 57 to 65, 66, maybe even just a little bit beyond that, as Chiron sometimes goes back and forth across in his retrograde cycle. So interestingly enough, this is the energy of the times we're in. This weekend has this electric crackle going through it, but don't take that to mean that something's wrong or something is about to happen bad. Take it to mean that you're being rewired. You're being asked to rewire your commitments and your agreements, both for yourself and for the people that you are engaged with or in any other area of your life. And that Mercury coming together with Venus in Pisces allows us to see the love, the values, and the self-worth behind it all, the underpinning behind it all. All right, you guys, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Monday, come with your charts because it's the last day that we have to really talk about the solar eclipse. We'll also be talking about the fact that Mars will move out of Aquarius and into Pisces, and how does that change up the energy that we'll be experiencing for the next few weeks. And we'll take a look at the gates that are activated in that lunar eclipse, right? I think that's it. All right, guys. Much love to you all. See you on Monday. Bye.